Recently, I have done several videos about capturing and transferring VHS and Hi 8 tapes to the computer. I usually use my Canopus ADVC 110, although any Firewire-based DV converter should work just fine. What's going to be different about this video is I'm going to show the image quality that you can expect. All the video clips are from Hi 8 cameras that costed about $450 to $550. Some of them will be zoomed in 225%, some of them will be zoomed in 300%, but you can tell there's a lot of detail with these video clips. The video clips in the beginning will have no color correction filters to them at all, but later on I will show some color corrected clips. If you look at these video clips, it's up to you to decide if you think it looks good or is your method better. If you have a better method, that's great. I'd like you to post a video response. This is zoomed in 300%, but you can see all of her hair. Her hair didn't look like rabbit fur. This is zoomed in 300%, but there's still a lot of detail. You can see all the detail from the black Talex covering of this amplifier. When you're at the actual size of the video clip, of course things look good. When you zoom in, things start to look a little bit crappy, whether it's VHS or Hi 8. Now here's a little bit of color correction that was done. Some of you might think it looks a little bit better. Some of you might think it looks a little bit worse. That's really not the issue. Here we have this at actual size. Some people might think the shadows look a little too dark and the sky looks a little bit too white, I guess you could say, instead of being blue. But what you see right now is I added a little bit more dynamic range. You can see more in the shadows and there's a little bit more blue to the sky. That's what you should be able to do with Hi 8 and VHS tapes. The Firewire-based DV converters convert the analog videotapes into the DV codec. As you can tell, what they've stated at digitalfact.com is incorrect. I think the people at digitalfact.com and videohelp.com are incompetent. With this video clip, I darkened the shadows and added a little bit of saturation. Here is what it originally looked like. It's pretty plain. This video is not a color correction tutorial. As you can tell, this video clip is zoomed in 300%, but you can still see a lot of detail. As I stated, I'm not saying the Firewire DV converters are the best method. I think they're the best method I've seen thus far. You can see a lot of detail in the werewolf's hair. You can also see a lot of detail on the Frankenstein and the bricks in the back. I simply added a little bit of saturation and contrast to this video clip. The DV codec cannot be all that bad, or the major players in the world of broadcast arts never would have accepted the DV codec. They would have continued to use Betacam camcorders, which is not the same thing as Betamax. If what the folks at digitalfact.com say is true about the DV codec, then it would have to be true about uncompressed 10-bit video files with 422 color space. One of these video clips is the mini DV codec. The other is 10-bit uncompressed with 422 color space. Is this the uncompressed or is this the DV25 video codec? I doubt anybody can tell the difference between the uncompressed 422 10-bit video file and the native DV25 codec. Both clips have a color correction filter with the exact same settings. Once again, the one video clip is 10-bit uncompressed 422 and the other is native DV. I doubt you can tell the difference between the two video clips. I did use some minor color correction filters, and the settings are identical for both clips. I used my Mac Mini along with the Intensity Shuttle to capture the uncompressed video clips. I used a Windows PC and the ADVC 110 to capture the DV video codecs. You have two different operating systems and two different video capture devices. Yet the video quality looks identical, the colors look identical, everything matches. If you folks can't see a difference between the uncompressed video file and the DV25 video codec, why would you capture uncompressed? The non-linear editing systems don't stay restricted to that 8-bit 411 color space. I want to let people know there's no difference in editing the DV codec versus editing H.264 video files from my Sony a7 III when you're using programs like Premiere Pro or Final Cut Pro 10. If the folks at videohelp.com and digitalfact.com believe the DV codec has horrible image quality, then they would also have to state that uncompressed 10-bit 422 video files have horrible image quality because the end result was the same. The people at videohelp.com and digitalfact.com need to start making demonstration videos that show the superiority of their method over using a Firewire DV converter. They need to add contrast, adjust the saturation, darken the highlights a little bit, and lighten the shadows so we can see how much better their video codecs are compared to the DV codec or uncompressed video. The folks at digitalfact.com claim that if you use the DV codec, the contrast will vary from the source. On the left side, I have the Hi 8 camera connected directly to the AV monitor. On the right side, I have captured the video using the ADVC 110, and I'm outputting it with the ADVC 110 to the AV monitor using Premiere Pro. As you can tell, the image quality is identical. The reds look the same, the purples look the same, the green, the orange, everything matches. If you were sitting at my editing bay, you would not be able to tell the difference between playback from the Hi 8 camera versus playback from the computer. There are software programs out there that will allow you to capture an uncompressed 10-bit with 422 color space using a Firewire DV converter. You might even have the option to capture into H.264. You should never capture into those codecs using a Firewire DV converter. The reason being is once the analog tape hits that DV converter and sends it down the Firewire port, it is in the DV codec. You're not going to be capturing uncompressed, and you're going to be taking that DV codec and converting it to H.264. The DV codec doesn't take up that much space on your hard drive. You might as well capture it in the DV25 codec and store it in the DV25 codec. The same can be said about the cheap USB video capture devices. You might have software that'll let you capture uncompressed 12-bit with 444 color space, but the actual hardware within these cheap USB video capture cards is not all that great. The USB video capture cards can be problematic. A lot of times the audio and video will go out of sync. If you try and play back the captured video files in programs like iMovie, Premiere Pro, or Final Cut Pro, the audio or the video might be kind of funky. The drivers can sometimes be buggy. Sometimes they'll work with Windows 7 and 8, but they won't work with Windows 10. The Firewire DV converters do not require drivers. It's the exact same thing as hooking up a $600 RCA Firewire-based DV cam to your computer. Regardless of what you read on the internet, the Firewire DV converters do not need a TBC. I have never owned a TBC, and I can capture VHS tapes just fine. And my VCR does not have a time-based corrector built into it. The Intensity Shuttle does need a TBC. I don't really recommend the Intensity Shuttle because I've mentioned they can be problematic at times as well. Sometimes they have bad firmware updates. Sometimes they have bad driver issues. Having said that, both of these devices are discontinued. You'd have to buy them used. Are you going to give credibility to a bunch of idiots on the internet that haven't provided any evidence or proof to their claims? Or would you give more credibility to the key players in the world of broadcast arts? For this video, I placed the DV files in a 1080p 60 frame per second sequence and rendered out to H.264.